I'm Sue O'Connell. Tonight on Greater Boston, another mass shooting with another AR-15 style rifle. We'll hear from a forensic psychologist and a reporter behind a months-long Washington Post investigation into the rise of the weapon. Then, a new documentary digs into the rise of anxiety in children called Anxiety Nation. We'll hear from one of the filmmakers and her daughter who inspired the film. Yet another community is in mourning after another mass shooting in America. This time, a gunman armed with an AR-15 style rifle opened fire outside an outlet mall in Dallas, Texas on Sunday, killing at least 8 people before he was shot and killed by police. It was the 199th mass shooting so far this year, according to the Gun Violence Archive, and the second in Texas in as many weeks. On April 28th, a man shot and killed 5 of his neighbors inside their home north of Houston, including an 8-year-old boy, after the family had asked him to stop firing off rounds in his backyard. This killer also used an AR-15 style gun, which had been used in 10 of the country's 17 deadliest mass shootings to date. The gun and its rise in popularity here in the U.S. is the focus of a months-long investigation from the Washington Post. And I'm joined now by one of the reporters behind it, Alex Horton, a national security reporter for the Post, and Dr. Robert Mendoza, a neuropsychologist and owner of Boston Forensics Associates. Welcome to both of you. Alex, I want to start with you. And can you tell us what AR-15 stands for? I mean, I'm always amazed at how this argument really devolves into what the name of the weapon is that's killing so many people. What's AR-15 stand for?
Thanks for having me, Sue. Yeah, you're absolutely right that it really gets into semantic arguments very quickly. But AR-15 stands for Armalite Rifle 15, which is a nod to the original manufacturer of the firearm, which was Armalite.
And I was a member of a rifle team back when I was in high school, middle school and high school back in the 1970s. I was nationally ranked as a sharpshooter. I owned a weapon, I owned a rifle, and I have to say that my experience on that team as a member of the NRA, a junior NRA member, is very different from what someone who is joining now might be. Can you tell me, Alex, how the weapons, like if I were going to buy my Mossberg 22 bolt action, I probably wouldn't want to buy it this time. I'd probably want to buy something else because of the marketing, right?
Yeah, I think, gun makers have been very successful in selling not just the weapon itself, the AR-15, but also the image around it, the kind of cool guy, commando in waiting sort of mystique and image. And you're absolutely right. When you go to a gun store now, the shelves are saturated with AR-15s from, a number of different manufacturers, tons of different styles, tons of different price points. And I think it's another attractive feature for them, that are not just, relatively easy to shoot and easy to understand. But you can get an entry-level model for just a few $100. So I think those are a few selling points.
Let's take a look at a quote from your Washington Post reporting. The AR-15 is more than a weapon. It's a potent symbol with a grip on the American imagination, a readily available and easy-to-use killing machine wielded during some of the country's darkest moments, and a tactical weapon championed as the ultimate expression of Second Amendment rights. Dr. Mendoza, we have had a love affair with weapons and guns in this country, probably since our founding. I think it might be safe to say. What's different now? What's different in our culture now that is having all these mass shootings when guns, people have had hunting weapons for centuries. Right. What's different now? Right,
well, there's a culture. It's a culture that's evolving now with Madison Avenue marketing, it sounds like. Other countries have mental illness. Other countries have video games, all the things that we tie to violence and guns and so on. The United States is just off the charts, though, in that area. What really is disturbing, there are 3 trends that are related to this and actually played out in Texas recently. Since 2016, people's affiliations with hate groups involved in mass shootings has increased 3 times, threefold. There's also the concern that it's now a more public operation. The gentlemen, the men and women that were dying out there in Texas when the shooter got out of the car, he's in the parking lot now, in a public place. That's slightly unusual statistically now, and it's growing, retail shops, restaurants. And then the one that's referencing our conversation is there's an increase in people wanting notoriety, people feeling like they're part of the in crowd and the in group. That's on the rise. And I think when people start to market a weapon that can kill lots of people at once, people wanting to feel like that's a cool thing to do, it's really a bad combination.
Let's take a look at some of the statistics that you mentioned. What mass shooters have in common, according to the Violence Project, which studied data from mass shootings in 2021. Early childhood trauma and exposure to violence, an identifiable grievance or crisis point, have studied the actions of past shooters and the means to carry out an attack. You know, I've been thinking a lot lately, Dr. Mendoza, about when I was younger and the older people in my life who would yell at people who might park in front of their house on the street, kids get off my lawn, and then we're looking at some of these open carry states where people have more access to weapons and they're shooting people for turning around in their driveway. And these aren't kids doing the shooting, these are older people. Is it the accessibility to the weapons that have made our interactions more violent?
It's a combination, as you can imagine, of a lot of things. It certainly is. The more things that you have to kill people and the availability, the more likely that's going to be an outcome. The other thing is that, and I know people don't like to hear it because they think it's an excuse, but there is a mental health issue related to this, but not the one I think people think of. This isn't people hearing voices and so on kind of mental illness. These are people struggling, they're frustrated. There is a failing mental health system. It's broken. If you call to get a psychiatrist now in the greater Boston area, it could be months before you find somebody. To find a great therapist are leaving networks because insurance companies do such a poor job of reimbursement. Their billing system is a nightmare. So we have this horrible nexus, bad mental health system, people growing with frustration. And so now people that aren't necessarily mentally ill in that classic sense are now the people engaging in these behaviors that they might not have when they had a better system to deal with it.
Alex Horton, did you guys learn anything reporting on this that was surprising to you? I mean, we're all now sort of experts in mass shootings, but was there anything that struck out to you that was shocking?
Well, yeah, there's a couple surprising things, or things that I kind of confirmed what I, kind of know to be true, covering this and, being someone who's been around guns for a while now. But to go back to your previous question, there's also another kind of transition of the gun culture that took place over a few years, when you had, basically from the founding to about the 60s and 70s, you had gun culture that was rooted in being outdoors, hunting, sportsman type stuff. And then once there was laws and a really big focus on, increasing law enforcement, increasing harsher penalties because of rising crime in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, there was a general turn to the next phase of gun culture, which was predicated on self-defense. And, all the hundreds of ads we looked at from, 1964 through today, you start to see this transition to where it's about defending the country or defending your home or defending your kids. So there's this kind of move from shooting as recreation and hunting and maybe something you depend on for maybe even fun, to survival, to I need to protect my family here. And I think that there is this dynamic of these people getting shot for these really, kind of simple reasons. Pulling into a driveway, knocking on a door is predicated on this sort of hyper intense feeling of you could be attacked at any time. I think that certainly plays a role. When it comes to the ads themselves, what I found one of the most interesting that we sort of touch on in her story is there is, and you talked about the sort of semantics at the top of the show, that gun owners get into, being very precise about the way a gun is made or the way a gun is manufactured, how it functions. And the big argument on the gun control side is, this is very much like quote unquote weapon of war. It's very similar to an M4, M16 that the military uses. And the gun advocates say it couldn't be more different. It's you can't fire automatic, therefore these are night and day. But what's interesting is in the 60s and 70s, the ads and catalogs talk about how close the AR-15 was to the military's M16. There was one Colt ad or Colt catalog page from the 1970s that says the Colt Sporter looks like, functions like, and operates just like its military cousin. So there was this really early on attempt by gun makers and advertisers to say, look how close this is to a military rifle. And now it's the flip side, which is advocates are saying it couldn't be more different. And I thought that was a very interesting transition.
Yeah, I'm always struck by that. I can vividly recall my guidebook that I got from the NRA, and it was like the Second Amendment was at the front, but then it was all about safety. There was no mention of a different type of weapons to use. It was all about the sport of hunting or the sport of firing, and nothing about defending anybody.
Well, and imagine, tying into that, imagine if you're somebody who's feeling marginalized, all the things you mentioned about these attributes of many of the mass shooters, you're feeling marginalized, you're feeling horrible about yourself, you're feeling ostracized by everybody around you, you feel you need to, in some ways, protect that sort of sense of who you are, and then you go online and you start to see people saying, hey, you know, don't let people force you into corners. You know, you can protect yourself. It horribly plays into the developing pathology that somebody has, and the access being so easy to get. Now you're sending them down, you know, the hill pretty quickly at that point.
Alex, have you had any reaction from the manufacturers about the story or about how they're marketing things and if they're going to change?
I don't really wanted to talk about it. It's not a big surprise. I mean, generally when it comes to talking to gun makers or gun accessory producers, you know, it's sort of like going to the CIA for comment. You know, they're not going to respond, or they're just going to tell you we don't have anything to offer you. So there was not a ton of engagement. Surprisingly, the only really kind of conversation I had was one of the ads we featured was from a company that no longer exists, and it was acquired from a holdings company, and they still make some parts, and you know they wanted to convey that you know one of the flourishes of advertising you know in like the early aughts was about customizing your rifle or like the quality of parts, and they wanted to stress that. But beyond getting into the social dynamics of it, we didn't see a whole lot of enthusiasm from gun makers on exploring that.
Robert, as we wrap up here, the Second Amendment isn't going away. The weapons aren't going to be taken back. Is there anything that we can do to try to shift culture to put weapons in a place where they will be less dangerous to us?
So from the clinical standpoint, once a person is at a door of the school or the restaurant or the shopping mall with a gun, it is too late to really do anything clinically. If you're going to stop any of this from happening, you're going to have to start way upstream on this thing and start providing the kind of help that people need as they begin to devolve into these areas where they might explore the possibility of weapons, et cetera. For everybody that wants to put an armed person in the school, how about putting another trained counselor in the school, probably at the equal price, but with a better outcome because it's earlier in the process.
We should note there have been people with the guns trying to protect people who were there, and it had little or no impact. Alex Horton, Dr. Robert Mendoza, thank you for joining me. I appreciate your work on this.
Thanks for having us.
Next up, growing up has always come with emotional challenges, but in recent years, there have been growing concerns about the state of mental health among kids in this country. Before the pandemic, the CDC found that 1 in 5 children in the U.S. had a mental health disorder. But at the height of COVID infections back in 2021, data showed more than a third of high school students were feeling an impact on their mental health, and 44% reported feeling persistently sad or hopeless. Their statistics Laura Morton saw up close as she watched her daughter Sevi suffer from severe anxiety. Her experience ultimately inspired Laura's new documentary, Anxious Nation.
I was like hyperventilating. I was like, I can't breathe. I don't know what's going on. And she was like, I think you're having a panic attack.
Anxiety is like worrying about your shadow.
I just want to scream and being really upset, and you just kind of start spiraling.
You know, I pray about it, I think about it. I'm like, what can I do? What's the next solution? How can I help him?
Laura Morton and her daughter, Sevi, join me now. Thank you so much for both joining us. Sevi, I want to start with you, and first, thank you so much for sharing your experience both in the documentary and joining us now. I know it's always difficult to talk about, but I just want to start with you and ask, can you tell me what it's like, what you're feeling when you're having a panic attack, and how our audience might help understand what's going on with you and with others?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, so for me personally, when I'm having a panic attack, and there's multiple clips in the film, I just cry. I cry and I cry and I cry, and I spiral into this whole just emotion wave of just crying, overthinking, tensing up. And it's just something I can't hold back.
Laura, I share this with permission. We have a lot of anxiety. We have severe OCD in our family. I almost felt like you had a camera in my home as we were watching the beginning of your film, showing these brave kids and their families sharing what they're going through. You know, I know there's a number of folks sitting at home right now watching, saying, look at, what's wrong with these kids today? They've got everything in the world. I grew up, my parents were in the Great Depression. My parents lived through the Holocaust. They have all the things that they need in the world. Why are they anxious? What would you say to those folks?
Well, what a great question, Sue, and thank you for asking that. I think that it's really important that we understand, and this was one of my biggest aha moments in making the film, is that what our kids are feeling today is very real for our kids. I think anxiety has always been around. We've had different names for it throughout different generations, right? We've had rambunctious little boys. We've had nervous little girls. So I think that anxiety is not new. It's been around since the beginning of time. I think that we understand it a little bit better today. The most surprising audience for our anxious nation has been grandparents, because they are really struggling with watching their kids now raise their kids. And I think one of the things that we have to understand is that we have this generation of really anxious parents who never coped with their own anxiety. And now they're raising their kids, and they don't want their kids to feel the way they do. They don't want their kids to be hurting the way they do.
I want to get to the anxious parents too, Laura, but I also want to ask this question, and Sevi, maybe you have an opinion on this as well. As I say all the time, I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and growing up in the 70s feels like it was an entirely different planet. The numbers support drinking, not as big a deal with kids. Obviously, you know, addiction issues are a major deal. I don't want to downplay it. But kids today, as we like to say, not drinking as much, not partying as much, not driving as much, not having as much sex, not doing the sort of self-harm that many of us did in our adolescence, in our middle school years. So that should be good news. But I'm wondering, Laura, was that maybe a way that we were self-medicating and self-treating ourselves with some of the same issues that teenagers are having today?
You know, so I'm not an expert. I'm a mom of an anxious child, so I can't speak to that specifically, but I can tell you that in my opinion, I think that we've always found ways, if we're not feeling, you know, comfortable in our own skin, I think escapism is always something that we've turned to. I think, you know, we open our film with exactly what you just said, that that in the past, you know, pregnancy, drinking while driving, drug use, that was always a very big issue and concern, and that has gone down significantly over the last 30 years. And what we're seeing are these soaring rates of mental health issues among our youth. And there's a variety of reasons for that.
I want to throw to another clip of a family who shares in your documentary. It's Jackie Ramsey speaking with her daughter Cooper about her anxiety.
Well, sometimes I'm afraid you'll get mad. Like when I did bad on that audition, you're just like, Cooper, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm sick of it.
I worry that it's a reflection on me. I also kind of feel that I would nail every audition. They seem really easy to me. Here I am spending all the time and the energy and the financial commitment on therapy and this, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like you let your anxiety win.
Sevi, I'm going to go to you. This actually is from my real life. I just want to let you know that I can't tell you how many times I've said that to my daughter. She recently showed me a TikTok of a kid who was showing all the things his mother did in high school, and then showed that he spends his day just staying in the house, and that he can't compare to his mom. Can you talk about how it feels for your generation to have the parental generation so up in your business that we are looking at even the parent who thinks they're hands off is like, we're way in there. How does it feel for you?
Right. I think just some parents don't understand exactly what's going on, especially because of the introduction of social media. Our parents didn't grow up like that. So I think, when it comes to, especially social media, actually, when it comes to having, like social media and dealing with the issues that come along with that, I just don't think parents really understand. And it doesn't mean that that's a good or bad thing, but I think it's just we are growing up in such different times.
Laura, that's a great example, that clip of what you were saying with Jackie's anxiety, right? And the anxiety that we have. I always say that when we become parents, we want to raise ourselves. Unfortunately, we don't get ourselves. We don't get ourselves in the time that we were in, right? We don't get a child from the 1960s. We get someone in the new century. What did you learn making this film about the generation of parents with all of our anxiety, and what are the experts telling you about what we should be doing with that?
Sure. First, I want to say I think it was very brave of Jackie to leave that scene in the film. And she is not alone. She is not the only parent that talks to their kids that way. We see it all the time at the soccer field, the baseball field, swim meets, auditions and, theater and things like that. So I think it was really brave. And I think it's really brave of you to say that happens in your house. So that's, that was the whole point and purpose of putting the material in the film that we did. We wanted families to feel seen and heard. And we wanted them to know they're not in this alone. And that's how I felt when I made this film. I think for me, my biggest aha was really understanding that my daughter needs to be who she is, not who I want her to be. And I think as parents, we're well-intentioned. And we think we're offering our kids great advice by saying, you should go to law school. You need straight A's. Maybe that's not their calling. And, I feel like for so many parents, I think taking a step back and just letting our kids, bloom where they're planted and blossom into who they want to become. And I think that there's just a great need for that, not only, to us as parents, there is no such thing as a perfect parent. And we certainly show that in this film, including myself. But there also is no, there's no escaping that our kids are struggling. I think we really need to stop and listen and have a better understanding of what this feels like for them. You started off this conversation by saying, there's a whole generation of parents who are like, I don't get it. What's so hard about life today? Life is hard today. And the reaction that our kids are having is a natural response to this mayhem that they're living through. So
Sevi, you hear your mom say that, and you hear people say, you just grow where you are, but then you go on social media, and no matter how hard you try to edit what you see, you are bombarded with images of people sharing things that have been airbrushed and use filters and have lighting and are professionally done, and they're saying, hey, I just woke up this way. How does that conflict work with you trying to stay emotionally healthy?
Well, body image and beauty standard has definitely been a big challenge in my life. Really, when I hit the age 11, 12, 13, that's when it really all started. I think it's difficult for girls, especially my age, to be going on Instagram and to be seeing all these beautiful celebrities that are, yes, they're beautiful, but like also there's so much behind the scenes that we don't understand and we don't think about in the moment. We're just like, why can't I look like that? And I think it's a really difficult thing to comprehend, because it's getting just so like real looking, but it's not.
Laura, in the documentary, of course, you address not only the challenges of the folks in your film, but there are, the disparities between folks of brown and black, African American, urban, rural. It's not easy for anyone, and it's more difficult for some. And at the same time, I think we all know from personal experience, psychiatrists and therapists not taking insurance, the out-of-pocket expense easily, $300-400 a month. So only certain constituencies are able to get help after a 6-month or 12-month wait list to see a psychiatrist. What are the experts telling you about how this disparity and these challenges for everyone can be addressed?
I think that there's a lot of work that we have to do. I think this has been the proverbial kicking of the can for decades in this country. For the richest country in the world, we are definitely failing not only our youth, but all of us who are in need of this kind of care right now. We have criminalized mental health in this country. If you're walking down the street and you have a heart attack, they're calling you an ambulance. But if you're walking down the street and you have a psychotic break, they're calling the police. And, Rikers Island is one of the largest mental health facilities in the country, and Rikers Island is prison. It is not a mental health facility. So I think we have a lot of work to do. We don't provide resources. We do, certainly, and one of the, really for me, it was very eye-opening when I was interviewing Dr. Kenya Hamid, who had been working in Flint, Michigan for many, many years, working with families who were, going through a lot during the water crisis. And it was very eye-opening for me to hear her say there were no resources, no school nurses, no school counselors, nowhere for these kids or families to turn. And they have to make a choice between putting food on the table, paying their rent, or getting their kid help. And I think that we have to do better in this country. I think we need to demand better. But substantive change needs to start with us. It's systemic in our home, and we need to take control of the issue within our home. I think so many families look to the schools to solve the problem, and the schools aren't equipped. And the schools say, hey, it's a family problem. And, as long as we keep pointing, it's you, we're not going to make any progress. I think there's a lot of work to do. And it's really what I'm dedicated to as I move forward in talking about not only Anxious Nation, but a movement around it.
Well, Laura Morton, Sevi Morton, thank you so much for joining us. I certainly direct folks to the film, and I appreciate and salute your bravery and transparency, sharing your struggle and your achievements. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us.
The film, again, is Anxious Nation, and you can catch a screening of it on May 17th at Boston's Regent Theater. For tickets and more information, you can head over to anxiousnation.com. And that's it for tonight, but come back tomorrow. A group of Massachusetts mayors have come together to diversify public real estate projects. We'll hear from one of them. That's tomorrow at 7. Thanks for watching. I'm Sue O'Connell. Good night.